Trigger warning, this episode contains descriptions of domestic violence, which includes controlling behavior and physical abuse. If this is triggering for you, please consider skipping this episode. The beginning of a new romance is the best. The butterflies you get every time your phone dings with a notification that he or she just sent you a text. The feeling of excitement over getting to know this person and all the experiences you'll come to share together. Everything with this person is brand new. Holding hands, walking into a movie theater, eating takeout together as you binge watch Netflix, planning a getaway where you could both just focus on each other and no one else. If you could bottle up this new relationship feeling, it would have to be called intoxicated, because that's how it feels. Like your senses are muted and intensified all at once. It's an amazing feeling. So amazing that it can make you miss things you otherwise might have noticed. That now, in hindsight, look like flashing neon signs screaming, "Do not date this person." If you could have seen them, you would have listened, but the signs are hard to see when you're consumed by that feeling. And the worst part about it is that there are people in this world who know how easy it is to take advantage of you when you're in this intoxicated stage of love, when your shield is down, when you can only see the future they pretend to want with you and not their hand in your wallet. Welcome to the podcast that reminds you it isn't the boogeyman you should be worried about. It's the stranger you know. They say you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince. But in 2016, Tracy was tired of kissing frogs. She was a single mother living in Kansas City, and honestly, she just wanted to find someone to share her life with. So she did what most people do when they feel like they need to cast a wider net to find a romantic connection. She joined a dating app. And it wasn't long before she came across a man named Mickey. As she skimmed his profile, she saw all of the things you would want to see in a potential partner. He had a great job working as a pilot, and he was clearly successful because he owned his own real estate company as well. He said he was religious, so good morals, and the man in the profile picture had a nice, warm, inviting smile. So she swiped right, and before she knew it, she was riding on the back of his motorcycle on their very first date. The wind blowing through her hair, she could just feel herself truly enjoying the moment. Life as a single mom is hard, and most days she didn't ever feel like she had any excitement in her life. But being with Mickey from that very first date changed that for her. Soon, both she and Mickey were obsessed with each other. Mickey doted on her constantly, and he worshipped her. He wanted to be with her all of the time, and the feeling from Tracy was mutual. After he moved into her house, some of Tracy's friends questioned whether she was moving too fast. But for Tracy, everything felt right. Which is why when Mickey asked her to marry him, Tracy was ecstatic, and she happily said yes. So Mickey and Tracy began to plan a life together. A life that could mean much less financial hardship for Tracy, because Mickey was in the middle of a medical malpractice suit that would result in $1 million settlement for him. He was about to come into a lot of money. And while this wasn't the reason why Tracy was marrying him, I'm sure she felt like she was living a dream. She would soon have a new husband and a new life, with the kind of financial security most single mothers could only dream of. So she didn't think twice when he bought her a Porsche, and then when he told her to go ahead and put that deposit down on the house they would share together, she happily did. Tracy's daughter Kayla was happy for her mom, who had finally found someone that treated her like the queen she is. But then, After they got engaged, something seemed off to Kayla. Mainly, she noticed how Mickey seemed anxious to just get married already. He kept wanting the wedding to happen sooner and sooner, triggering the little voice in the back of her head to wonder, why the rush? So one day, she decides to do a little bit of digging. She rifles through his car when he isn't looking and discovers that Mickey might actually not be his real name. She finds documents with the name Scott on them, a name she had never heard Mickey call himself before. So she turns to the only tool she has at her disposal that can give her some more information on the name she discovered: Google. And in what must have felt like a Lifetime movie come to life, she hits on a blog with Mickey's picture displayed prominently at the top, with 5 words that must have sent a chill down her back. Has this man victimized you? For Sandi, life was good when she met Rick in the fall of 2014. Rick, the same man Tracy would eventually come to know as Mickey, wasn't immediately a love interest for Sandi when they were first introduced. Here she is telling me more about how they first connected.
Before I met Rick, I was in property management, the apartment business, and I was doing well. I've been in the apartment business for so long and had a lot of success. And I was at a quite a large property and was having success there, enjoyed my job, and was just confident with my life, my friends, my family, and what I was doing. And one day, Rick walked in and he had this kind of aura about him, a little confidence, and he was in the corporate housing business and wanted to rent a couple apartments from our property and then fill it with, the furniture, the furnishings, everything, so that somebody coming into town for a short-term stay could just drop their suitcase and come on in. And so our company rented his company a couple of apartments. And so I knew him, and had a business relationship with him for about 4 to 6 months.
Eventually, though, Sandi and Rick's business relationship took a romantic turn.
One day he asked if I wanted to go out, and I was like, oh no, I felt kind of uncomfortable. I didn't want to mix business with that. Well, fast forward, a couple months later, one of our business associates that I worked with, she was going to quit the company and she was going to have a going away party at a certain restaurant bar. And so a bunch of us went, and he happened to be there. And so um, just kind of talked with him. We had a great time. Everybody had a great time with him. And then one thing happened that we just happened to be the last couple there, and we just kept talking and talking. And I said, well, I got to get home. I got to work tomorrow. So he followed me home to make sure that I got home okay, which I thought, well, that was great. That just doesn't happen anymore. So a couple days later, he asked if I wanted to go to lunch. I thought, okay, lunch is safe. And so we went to lunch, had a great time. And then he asked if I wanted to go out to dinner. So we did that. And then, it just eventually we started dating.
What immediately struck Sandi about Rick was what a gentleman he was. He opened her car doors and he showed her the kind of chivalry most women are hard pressed to find these days. Eventually, things grew to be more serious between them and they moved in together. Rick even suggested that Sandi quit her job so that they can have more time together, and she does. Rick's business was thriving and he dressed and acted like he had plenty of money, so Sandi felt good about her decision to support him and his business. For Sandi, her relationship with Rick felt easy and fun until after she and Rick became engaged.
And as soon as we got engaged, that's looking back now, that's kind of when things turned. He started kind of isolating me from my family. Now, I come from a family that is extremely close, great parents, a great sister. I don't have kids, I've never been married, but always spent a lot of time with my family. But I saw little things where, oh no, we're not going to such and such town. We've got things to do here. I said, well, we had plans. Well, we'll go another time. And just started the isolation part. Well, who are you on the phone with? I'm on the phone with my sister. And just little things like that is where it started looking back.
While Rick's behavior seemed to get more controlling, Sandy didn't become alarmed by it right away at the time. She also didn't make much of the calls he would need to take during dinner or the out of town trips he needed to take to handle business matters. She knew he was responsible for running a busy real estate company, and he seemed to be hands on in making sure it was a success.
He would be on the phone a lot, and we would go out to dinner, and we might be sitting either at the table or at the bar, eating our food, and his phone would ring and he's like, oh, it's a business call, I got to take this, or hey, I got to take this. And he'd go outside, which I thought, well, great, because it is rude to talk in a restaurant, and a lot of places don't like that. So I thought, okay, he's being courteous and he's going to take the call outside. And so he'd come back in, but he would do that a lot. I thought, gosh, well, and corporate housing is can be a very busy uh, profession. And he told me he was the CEO of the business. So I thought, well, and I knew that the business was generating a lot of traffic with people wanting to rent his apartments. And I've been on that side of the business before, and it can be very busy and it's a lot of hours. It can be. But and if you're trying to drum up business, you're working extra to gain business. So you build your clientele, or repeat business, I should say. Anyway, so I didn't think anything of that. Um, he would, when we lived together, he would say, hey, I've got to go to Houston or Atlanta. He told me he had apartments in Atlanta, Houston, and Dallas, and somewhere else. So he said, hey, we're having issues. I've got to go take just a couple days and go down there and see all about it. I'm thinking, doesn't he have people down there? He's like, oh, I got to go take care of this. So then he would come back.
Yes, he would often take business trips out of the state, but Sandy didn't have any reason to believe that Rick was doing anything but what he said he was doing. There were no signs of another woman, and if anything, Rick seemed to only escalate in his desire to marry Sandy. He started to push Sandy to marry him sooner rather than later, and Sandy, whose mother was terminally ill with cancer, wanted to wait while she focused on her mother, but Rick would not let it go. He grew relentless in asking Sandy when they were going to get married, until it became a huge source of tension between them. Slowly, Sandy began to feel less confident that the future she had planned with Rick was still right for her. And then, one night, that future came to a screeching halt when Rick became violent. Sandy and Rick had checked into a hotel room in Iowa as part of a business trip, and the night had not been going well already. The couple had argued in the bar of the hotel when Sandy decided she had had enough. When she tried to gather her things and leave the hotel room, Rick refused to let her go.
And he stepped in front of me. I said, you better get out of the way. I need to leave. He goes, nope. And I said, you better step back. And I went for the door, and that's when he pushed me down on the bed, and he grabbed my arms, my wrists, so that I couldn't move. And I said, you better get off me or I'm going to start screaming. And I tried for the phone, and I couldn't. He grabbed my arm again, and because I gotten it away a little bit, and he grabbed me, and he was just on top of me with his legs on my arms like I couldn't move. And I said, you better get off me. I'm going to start screaming. I'm giving you one last chance. And he wouldn't do it. I started screaming bloody murder, like, help, help me. And um, then eventually he pinched since he had his legs on my arms, Then he took one hand and pinched my nose, and then he took the other hand and he covered my mouth so I couldn't breathe. And I thought, this is it. I'm done here. I am done here. What am I going to do? What is my family going to do? So I don't know how this happened. I just kind of pressed my head in the back of the bed so hard, as hard as I could. And I had enough, a little bit, to turn my head so fast, and I bit the side of his hand so hard as I could. And he got up off the bed, and I went for the door to get out, and he caught me again and threw me down on the floor. And then he started kicking my back, and I'm screaming, thinking, why is no one coming to help me? Why is no one coming to help me? And it seemed like an eternity. Why can't anybody hear me? And so then I'm still screaming, curled up in a little ball in this room. And then he took the iPad that had the OtterBox covering, the hard covering on the edges, and he started wailing me on my head. He's beating me on the head, and I was having my hands over my face so that I could sort of see what he was doing, because I wanted to cover my eyes and my nose so he wouldn't break. The whole time I'm thinking, please don't let him hit your eyes or your nose, and don't pass out, because then he's going to finish you off. And I just screamed at one point, you are going to kill me. And he kept going at it for a few more moments, and then I don't know what happened. He just suddenly quit. I don't know if his hand was killing him from me biting him, and he left the door. He left the hotel room.
After Rick leaves, Sandi calls for help and tells police that she wants to press charges, so Rick is arrested for domestic assault. But then Sandi learns that his violent nature wasn't the only thing that Rick had been hiding from her. It's that same night that Sandi is told something that makes her question how well she ever actually knew the man that she had been engaged to marry only hours earlier.
Well, the night I was actually assaulted, as a matter of fact, I was down in the manager's office of the hotel, speaking to the police officers, and one of them said, hold on, I got to go take this call. And then he came back and he said, so you said you're engaged to him? I said, yes. And he said, well, we just got a call from another woman named Jean who said she's his wife.
The discovery that Rick was married triggered alarm bells for Sandi and her family. It leads to Sandi's brother-in-law deciding to take a closer look at who Rick actually was.
And he opened up his computer and started looking at stuff and found the blog.
The same blog that Tracy's daughter had stumbled on and that Sandi's brother-in-law had discovered after the assault becomes almost like a beacon for the victims of Richard Scott Smith. Except to some of these women, Richard was known as Rick, or Mickey, or Scott. The blog, which had been started by his then-wife Lisa, shared regular updates on Richard's whereabouts and warnings to other women to stay away from him. It seemed like every few weeks there were new women finding the blog and sharing their own horror stories of their encounters with Richard, and they all began and ended the same way, with Richard dating and in some cases marrying them before taking off with their life savings, draining their joint checking account, and in some cases leaving them with crippling debt. Some of the women were conned out of tens of thousands of dollars, with one victim claiming she was left with $700,000 in debt after her relationship with Richard. Another woman, one of Richard's former wives, was forced to file bankruptcy in the wake of their marriage. Sabrina, Ellen, Rachel, Jean, Tracy, Sandi, Lisa, Jennifer, Carla. All names of women who were fed lies by Richard about who he was as he gained their trust, love, and access to their bank accounts. He tells these women he went to law school, he has a finance degree, he's expecting $1 million settlement from a medical malpractice suit. All lies. The truth is that Richard Scott Smith is an expert at deception. He's operated under 10 Social Security numbers at least, and 43 phone numbers, all of which have helped him dupe countless women into believing he is who he says he is. And despite making these women believe he was financially well off, he doesn't actually have the deep pockets he pretends he does. Remember that Porsche he bought Tracy? It's later repossessed because it was paid for with a bad check. In some cases, he's even still married when he meets and marries his next target, but if he knows that bigamy is a crime, he doesn't seem to care. Maybe he tells himself it's harder to get caught if he marries in different states, so he does. Missouri, Tennessee, Nevada. Looking at the timeline and the pattern of his cons, this man treated love and marriage like a business, and business was good. The blog becomes filled with comments from women who ask each other questions like, is anyone still married to him, and does anyone know where he is now? Some of the women try to report him to law enforcement, but they're met with skepticism and questions that make them feel like they're at fault for what happened. Why would they trust this guy? Why would they allow him access to their money? It's hard for the police to see his behavior as criminal when these women voluntarily opened their lives to him. But while some women struggle to convince the police that Richard should be charged with a crime, Sandi doesn't face that challenge, and she moves forward with trying to hold Richard accountable for what he did to her. He's placed on probation for the assault, but the problem is he falls off the map and fails to appear at his probation hearing. He's also charged and pleads guilty to identity theft in Kansas after a woman named Sabrina discovered Richard had used her credit cards to pay for medical expenses to the tune of close to $100,000. While he serves some time in jail for the identity theft charge, he manages to bond out on probation, and then he pretty much disappears again, violating his probation for that charge as well. It's at this point the women form a sort of alliance to track him down, and it catches the attention of filmmakers Rachel Grady and Heidi Ewing, who decide to tell the women's stories and document their efforts to find Richard in a 4-part docu-series called Love Fraud. It premiered on Showtime in August 2020, and it follows the women as they hunt down Richard Scott Smith with the help of a female bounty hunter named Carla Campbell. If you've seen the series, you know that Carla agrees to step in and give these women some form of retribution for what Richard had done to them. Here's Carla telling me how she got involved in helping Richard's victims.
Actually bonded him out of jail. He got arrested for, Sabrina was one of the women that was involved, and she was here locally. And he did identity theft on her credit cards and everything she had, her bank accounts. Anyways, she had him arrested. And when he got arrested, they came to us, our bonding company, to get him out. So that's how I originally found out about Richard. And then I guess it was just a few days into him being out, the girls came to me and was just like, they made phone calls to the office, and my buddies that work up there was just like, you got to get a hold of these women because, they keep calling up here and they want you to revoke his bond. And I was like, oh, great. So I got a hold of them and met with them. And they was like, oh my God, you just don't even realize who you bonded out of jail. So now he's back on the street again. And, we got to get him off the street because this is what he's doing.
After meeting with the women, Carla decided that she wanted to help them free of charge, especially because the police showed little interest in tracking down Richard Scott Smith. But she would need a legal basis to bring him in.
And, there was more women involved, and Sabrina brought them into the picture. And I just was sitting at the office one day, and all these women came in for a meeting with me and told me their stories. And I was just like, yeah, he needs to go, but I got to figure out a way to get him back in jail without it being my problem. Because when you bond somebody out, there's only 2 people in the nation that can put you back in jail, the judge and us. The judge, because he can, and us, because we've got money on your head. So, and he hadn't broken any of our rules. So anyways, I guess one of the women, I'm not sure how this rolled out, but one of the women got a hold of the aunt. The uncle bonded him as a co-signer. And then the aunt said, no, you're going to revoke the bond. And she hand carried him into the office to get off of the bond. So at that point, we had a legal right to pick him up and put him back in jail because the co-signer wanted off the bond.
Still, even after listening to these women and agreeing to help them, there was a part of her that questioned how so many women could fall victim to Richard. It's probably the same question some of you are asking yourself now. Because on the outside, there's nothing special about Richard Scott Smith. Yet somehow he managed to con multiple women into believing there was. So when I asked Carla what she thought drew these women to Richard, she said with all of these women, Richard stuck to the same ploy. He acted like a true gentleman.
And, pull your chair out for you and talk to you pleasantly and bring you flowers or take you out to lunch for no reason. And, take you to the park for a walk just because. So, and that's what they're looking for. Those men don't exist anymore. But this guy has it down to a fine science.
While Carla was all in, finding Richard became more difficult than she anticipated.
It was very hard to find him because he was locked in a penthouse down in Kansas City. And there was no way for us to get in there. But we had to find him first. And the deal was we had a snake in the grass that kept telling him what we were doing. So every time we would think we had him cornered, he would move somewhere else. He had apartment buildings and penthouses and all of this stuff at his fingertips and people with big money at his fingertips. So every time we would corner him, we thought we knew what was going on. He would move it up and he would go somewhere else.
But eventually, Carla did track Richard down and turned him over to the police. It was the culmination of a joint effort amongst a group of women who had decided to take back their dignity, and the one woman who couldn't turn her back on them. But while Richard was sentenced to prison in Iowa for his probation violation stemming from Sandy's domestic assault charges, he only served 6 months before he was free again. And free is how he remains today. Free to target and marry the next woman who believes his lies. Free to take advantage of the trust that's freely given to the person we believe we're going to spend the rest of our life with. And the sad thing is, there isn't only one Richard Scott Smith in this world. While Richard is a prolific con artist and bigamist that has likely conned close to 30 different women, there are other men out there who also use love as their weapon of choice to steal from the women willing to give it to them. On that note, Carla has a word of advice for any woman beginning a new relationship.
If you've got a guy out there and you think it's going to become something, and even if you're not seeing any red flags, what's a red flag nowadays? You just don't know what that red flag is going to be. But if you've got somebody that you're truly interested in, spend $50, do a background check. Don't go on the internet and Google a background check because, don't Google. It will get you nowhere. But find a local PI or a local attorney that'll do a background check. Like my girls now know they could come to me and I'll do a background check for them. Have somebody reputable to do a background check and see what his background is. He could have something stuffed away in a corner from over in Oklahoma and nobody knows about it because it's like everything is a misdemeanor and it don't just willy-nilly show up unless you go in and dig for it. So my advice, just do a background check.
And while Sandy will never be the same after her experience with Richard, she has come out of it more empowered to abandon ship on any relationship that doesn't feel right. Here she is sharing her message.
Ladies, you're listening out there. No person is worth demeaning you, assaulting you, and then saying they're sorry and give you flowers the next day. That is just not going to work. Just run away from that really quick. I don't care if you are in a relationship that just started, you're in the middle of it, or you've been in this for a long time. You are so much more worth it than anybody treating you like this, because just run as fast as you can. And if you don't think that you don't have any help or support, you do. Find a friend, a family member, go to the church, a coworker, somebody that you can trust, and get out of the situation, because do not ever put your life in danger, and to the point that you're not going to have a life anymore, because it's not worth staying with a person like that.
My full interviews with Sandi and Carla are available to stream now. If you watch the docu-series Love Fraud on Showtime, or you want to hear more from them on their experience and thoughts on Richard Scott Smith, you should definitely take a listen. Special thanks to them both for taking the time to talk to me. Also, if you need help figuring out how to look into someone you're seeing, or have had your own encounter with Richard Scott Smith, or whatever name he's using these days, email the show and I'll pass it along to Carla. Believe it or not, even while battling lung cancer, Carla is still trying to put the bad guys away. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening, and if you like the podcast, be sure to review, hit that subscribe button, and share it with your friends. It really helps it grow. And if you have a story of betrayal by someone you thought you knew who turned out to be a stranger, email it to thestrangeryouKnowpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll share it on a future episode. Until then, trust no one.
Stuff.
You're not going to say anything while I'm
I'm
recording?
gonna say 0 stuff.
Okay.
That means nothing.